The epigenomic was then taken in enforcedly. It is not possible to ignore it anymore. Epigenetic factors. What are they? All what I was talking about and what I explained. These are all epigenetic factors. What's epigenetic? Epi means above the genetic. And this is food, where primary and secondary metabolites belong to, weather, what tides we have currently, diseases, toxic chemicals, drugs in a positive and negative sense, depending on how you perceive it, alternative medicine, medical products, microbiome, sports, the financial status. Am I stressed or not? Everything can be stress or not, a positive or a negative, and especially relationships. All these are epigenetic factors. And also the mental condition, how we perceive the world. All this plays on the piano of the genes more or less strong. The founder of the epigenetic is Dr. Bruce Lipton. He found it out over 55 years ago. I think it was 1976, during his research with stem cells. In this time, when the genetic came up, he found out that the genetic is not simply determined in the cell core, and it happens what happens, but rather that the surrounding medium that was carrying little changes like sugar content, oxygen content, has decided what sort of cell is developing, whether it turns into a fat cell, a heart cell, a kidney cell, or what else. And it means that the genetics is not determined, but the surrounding is determining the outcome. He has described this very much in detail in his book Intelligent Cells. And I still remember in the past as a student, it was about the junk DNA. And we were told, I remember how I was sitting there, first or second grade, and our professor said this could all be cut out. That's junk. These are viral leftovers, rubbish we don't need. Yes, we are based mainly on junk. That's what the key message is for me. And meanwhile, it was found out that it is far more than junk and rubbish, the so-called not-coded DNA. To study the epigenomic or epigenetic better, the chronic kidney disease is suggested more and more, because a connection to the strong use of pesticides is likely to be visible there. And it is visible there that the genetic is controlled by something that is lying in the junk DNA. It is very clear. We call it junk. This is very common. Science is dynamic. It is always presented differently, but a theory is postulated, where there are probably evidences, but it can be thrown over again. That is what science is about. What absolutism you see outside there has nothing to do with science. This has to be said here. Theses are thrown over, and that epigenetic has a much superior role. This comes out now. Also in the development of mammals. Here mice were chosen. They have inactivated a transposon, what refers to the so-called junk DNA, in pregnant mice, and 50% of the babies were born dead. These are small hints, but after all, it is always the same that the poisoning and the destruction of nature has negative aspects for all living beings, us as well. Here's something else that I found very interesting. It is about the epigenetic modulation of food, more specific, from plants that can get functional food. Functional food, biohacking, call it as you like. Biohacking, brain hacking, all these things are based on the research of natural substances and the food. We do not know it anymore, or we have never experienced it in our age, what it really means to live in an intact nature and to eat this food. And this is why healthy food, and there is paid attention on the synergy of single substances in the field, there this is seen as a hack. What is the normal condition? How it should be? That's how I see it. There is actually too much what we should not eat. And here they have made researches with weightlessness, that through weightlessness as an epigenetic factor, the nutrient content in plants was massively influenced in a positive way, and that through the epigenetic modulation of different factors, the nutrient content is determined. And here with weightlessness. What is also to say here is that nature always has a testing center. It is a testing center of new connections. There's a lot happening, of course, what we don't recognize. But if it is ecologically acceptable, we call it ecological toxicity, should be determined of some substances, this is decided during nature, when it is to some extent intact in the wilderness at its best. There it is tested on practical use. What is when you have a substance that at once kills a lot of other things, or the symbiotic bacteria? This will not win through. There is a quality testing of nature. And when you only go the laboratory way, this is not taken with. And we are not to some extent as good, I have to say. Others might see it different, but they have not understood the complexity of nature yet. Another epigenetic factor, stress, or as I said, this is the superordinate. Food can be a stressing factor when it is not good, but it can also be something very nourishing. Stress as an epigenetic factor, I have mentioned already, that this affects the health and the body, that it has a big influence, also permanent stress, that we are not so much aware. This is picked up in this article with different links and so on. It's really a good one. 5 or 10 years ago, this all looked very different if you said that stress had a big influence on health and on the nutrient uptake. And this is explained here, how this surviving mechanism is activating certain brain functions and bringing down others. Nutrient uptake, for example, or nutrients are just brought to the heart or the legs, because this is important when I want to escape. The idea of escaping while being in an unpleasant situation. And this also shows at least the power of thoughts. This can be found here. That's where I want to speak about the broken heart syndrome, what exists. Here we have a lecture of a cardiologist on how feelings change the form of the heart. This is also called the Takotsubo heart, and it then has this form like this right bowl. At the left you see a normal heart, and in the middle there is the sick heart, or the broken heart, literally spoken, and it then has the form like this bowl. It can happen that people, after a big loss, the death of a beloved one, for example, develop this heart. He tells about one patient that lost her husband after a long illness, Alzheimer's or something like that. At first, she had to manage everything. It was not conscious to her, but when the grieving period started, after around 3 weeks, she became heart problems. Only 50% of the heart were working. After some weeks, when she passed through that grieving period, the heart normalized again. You can also have this according to positive things. But this then are different regions in the heart that blow up like a balloon. Well, emotions, the heart, people can die because of this. The heart has a big energy field and is far more than we believe. And it shows how feelings and thoughts influence organs of the body in a good or a bad way. Here, to the topic of autoimmune disease and stress, is there a link? For sure, there are a lot of ifs, but now the people open up more and more that there could be a causal link.